to give us a little bit of context of where we are at in the world today. Will you please welcome the CEO of Smarttech247, Raluca Saceanu.
So over the next 10 minutes, I want to share a few observations based on the last 12 months and some insights for 2025. And I look forward to discussing all these insights with you. Now it's a bit loud. With you throughout the day. Our observations are based on over 320,000 investigations conducted by our security operations centers. They're based on hundreds of offensive security engagements and incident response engagements. They're based on external threat intelligence and also collaborations with the likes of the FBI and the National Cybersecurity Center, who are both here today. In 2024, the most targeted industries were government, healthcare, and technologies, with some prominent examples that you might have seen on the video as well, such as CDK Global, which disrupted a huge amount of US car dealerships, Change Healthcare, the UK Ministry of Defense, and so forth. When we hold quarterly business reviews with our customers, phishing is always top of the agenda. I remember I had a conversation with one of our customers, he's actually here today, and he asked me, what is the number one threat that my organization faces based on what you guys have seen so far? And it's most of the time it is phishing. So it's no surprise that phishing remains to be a concern, and it will continue to be a concern in 2025. While access broker advertisements have grown by 50%, which shows the growing demand for compromised network access. Last year, we talked about the exploitation of edge devices, which has shown no signs of slowing down. And we've seen both financially motivated and nation-state actors compromising organizations through these devices. And once they get in, based on 2024, it took them an average of 48 minutes to spread laterally. That's an average. Some of them went in much, much faster. So if you were to put that into context, ask yourself the question, if you were attacked, how long would it take you to detect and respond? What is your response time? And is it faster than 48 minutes? The geopolitical landscape has continued to affect us all, and the most active nation states are still the usual suspects: Russia, China, North Korea. Most malicious activity that we see in our Security Operations Center originates from Russia. However, in 2024, we've seen a 150% increase in activity from China, and their favorite target is, of course, the US critical infrastructure. And, of course, in 2024, we've witnessed how AI has changed the threat landscape through things like open source models, faster reconnaissance, and the threat of internal and external data leakage. Open source AI models like DeepSeek are introducing a number of new risks, but the one that concerns me the most is the fact that bad actors are using these technologies to conduct their criminal operations. Researchers have conducted multiple tests on these platforms, especially on DeepSeek, tests like prompt injection, tests like malware generation, jailbreaking, and unfortunately the technology has failed a lot of these tests. So criminals can now access a program that is producing harmful code, harmful instructions, unethical content, and potentially destructive tactics. Which I guess is good news for the cyber criminals, because they can leverage all this. So cybercrime is now no longer reserved for the great and the elite hackers. Today, anyone with an internet connection and access to AI can launch cyber attacks. So what this means is that the barrier to entry has gone so down that the cyber field is now about speed, automation, and access. So if it's easier than ever to launch an attack, then of course we're going to see more breaches. But the real problem isn't that cybercrime is growing. Of course it is a problem, but the response is the actual problem, our response to that. So over the last 5 years, companies have been investing in cybersecurity tools, and there's been an 8% on average year-on-year investment in cybersecurity tools and tactics. And cybercrime has grown by nearly 30% year-on-year. So we're spending more, but we're failing behind. And the issue isn't that these threats are just evolving, is that the cyber criminals are adapting faster and faster. But one thing is for sure, we can't keep throwing money at the problem. We need to start investing differently. We need to start adopting different strategies so that we can keep up with these guys. So organizations are spending money, but they're getting breached. And some of them suffer huge consequences, like we've seen in 2024. So then it becomes a boardroom problem, because when a breach happens, it's not the security suite that is going to talk to the media, to the regulators, or to investors. It is the C-suite. So what is keeping them awake at night? Let's say this year. It's things like, what happens if one of my suppliers gets hacked and I'm down for half an hour, for a week, for a month, for a year? What happens if we get hit with ransomware? What happens if I can't find the people to manage my operations and to deal with the problem? What happens if my data is leaked on the dark web? While organizations are struggling to address these challenges, the attackers are using these very challenges to their advantage. So they're building entire business models based around your fears. And that's where the real problem is. So if you think about a normal, legitimate company, they typically invest about 5 to 10% of their revenue back into innovation. Cybercriminals invest 20% back into their operations. That's how they purchase kits. That's how they invest in AI. They go after the vendors. They pay ransomware affiliates. They collaborate with each other. They buy botnets. They buy exploits. And of course, they're going to use the chaos that is being created by the geopolitical landscape as well. So speaking of all this, and speaking of the fact that this is a very dark economy, I want to put all this into context for you. And I want to show you what really goes on inside a criminal network. Some of you might have seen that the internal chats of Black Basta, one of the most successful ransomware operators in the last few years, were leaked. And we looked through these and we drew some interesting conclusions, and you can see their methods and their tactics. And I think this is very relevant for all of us to understand how they actually operate. They reinvest their money, they buy access, they buy exploits. For example, they purchased an exploit for Ivanti VPN for nearly $200,000. Because you all know what happened with Ivanti last year, so it was well worth it. I think they negotiated that down to $100,000, because they always negotiate as well. They evade tools effectively, so let that sink in. Tools like CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Trend Micro, tools that you trust in your network, they go in and they turn them off. And they've turned them off successfully, because we've seen it in the chats and we've seen it in the conversations that they've had. They target specific organizations, and they use AI to do it faster. So for example, this is just a screenshot of one of their conversations saying the first thing they do is they go on LinkedIn, plus all the other databases they got for spam. And then I'm going to use AI or Gen AI tools to make sure that this is faster. Reconnaissance is now done 90% faster than it was a few years ago. So it can be done in as little as 15 minutes compared to a few hours. They choose their targets very specifically. So let's take an example and go through what happened. The insurance and finance firm called Arthur J. Gallagher. Right. What you're looking at is a real example. So screenshots, conversations between themselves, between them and the victim. And you can see how they chose the target based on their revenues. They decided to hit on December 28th, great time, right before after Christmas, so in between Christmas and New Year's, when everyone is at home. They got in likely through stolen VPN credentials. They exfiltrated 1.5 terabytes of data, and the initial ransom demand was $28 million. Then the company, the victim, they tried to get the money from their insurance company. It didn't work. Then the second lender refused as well to give the money for the ransom, so they said, we can only pay $125,000, take it or leave it. Of course, the ransomware gang said, absolutely not. Here's our best and final offer, what was it, $1.75 million. They went back to them and said, we can only now pay $1 million. And the hacker said, nah, we don't want it. So the result, and that's another screenshot from their chats, they didn't pay and the data was leaked. So what needs to change? Because something is clearly not working. Like I said before, instead of throwing money at the problem, we need to start thinking strategically about how we're investing our effort and our financial resources as well. Remember, the victims, they had good tools in place. I believe they had CrowdStrike, they turned it off, and yet still got breached. They had backups, but they failed to restore the backups. And it was way too late anyway. The data was already in their hands. So when you look at all the tools that companies buy, the question is, why are we using so many tools if they're not connected to each other, if they're not working well, if we don't find the people to manage these tools as well? And how can we get more support from our partnerships, right? The partnerships that you build with your security vendors are so incredibly important. They shouldn't be just transactional partnerships. They should be strategic partnerships. So after this, maybe you can go and make a list of your security partnerships, your security vendors, and ask yourself the question, are they strategic or are they tactical? Because they should be strategic and they should support you with your operations and with your strategy a lot more. Because in order to keep up with this chaos, we all need resilience, we need to be agile, and we need to be strategically thinking. And that's where the role of the CISO is so incredibly important. Yesterday's CISO was focused on technology, and today's CISO is focused on resilience. Everyone is talking about resilience. Today's CISO also needs to be able to assess the impact that a cyber attack has on their organization, to understand what the effect on the share price is, and to deal with all that. The most successful CISOs that I've seen have built a fantastic relationship with the CEOs, with the legal department, with the board. And then the board has also stepped in because they need to support the security leaders. They need to ensure that there's accountability at the top. Investments need to be made in building resilience and not just buying more tools. And they need to demand end-to-end visibility into what's happening in their environment, from vendor security to AI. And again, it can't just be the CISO driving that agenda. They need support from the board. So today we're going to hear some fantastic stories and insights, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you. And I hope they will inspire you to think about your strategy a little bit differently, maybe with a new perspective. But one thing is for sure, the organizations that are the most successful organizations are the ones that embrace resilience, agility, and strategic thinking. So maybe if you want to take a minute to reflect and ask yourself the question, what is my end goal? What is my vision for my security strategy? Is it simply not to get hacked? Or is it that if I do get hacked, I need to recover fast, respond fast, and keep moving forward? Because I think that mindset is going to help you drive your strategy differently. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raluca.